Hello friends, welcome back to the www.planeavenger.com, where we just don't want to hear the news, we want to understand the news. But before I get to the news, I got to give a little birthday shout out. I know it's a little goofy, got to do it for the fans though. Happy 31st birthday, Iran. That's right, the Islamic Republic of Iran turns 31 years old today, February 11th. Happy birthday, dear Iran. The world hates you. Yo, that's not a very happy birthday greeting, but that is the reason for the season for this podcast. What is the deal with all the hate towards Iran, even here on its 31st birthday? Well, I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, you understand that the United States of America despises Iran, and Iran hates them right back. I mean, Iranian religious leaders refer to the United States as the Great Satan. And for its part, remember, former President George Bush referred to Iran as the centerpiece of the axis of evil. And think about this, you have two states that are essentially putting each other in league with Lucifer. I mean, could you get more evil or more hate or more anger or more aggression than that? In league with Lucifer, for goodness sakes. So they're not alone, though. I mean, most Western European states are mistrustful and don't like Iran. Israel, of course, hates Iran. Most U.S. Western allies absolutely despise and hate Iran. And Iran reciprocates that hate right back at everybody. One group that you probably haven't heard of is most Arab countries. Most other states in the Middle East also hate Iran. Most of Iran's neighbors hate Iran. Why is that? Why so much hate? Why would I suggest it's perhaps tied to this 31st birthday celebration? Because it is, of course. Try to make the tie so you understand the news. Who cares about all the pundits and press and prime ministers and presidents that rage about Iran's evil, Iran's bad, we're having sanctions. Oh, and the Iranian press is like, oh, the West are evil. They're all, get out of my way. Let's figure out what's going on here. Why is it that so many other countries hate Iran and feel real fear of its growing power? And why Iran's flaunting that power and hates everybody back with just as much passion? We have to back it up to the creation of the state. Again, we're going to entitle this one, Iran, the Irate State Built on Hate. Now, why would I suggest that? Because it really is, from the inception, a lot of anger and frustration goes into the revolution which creates the state and starts its relationship on a very bad footing with most of the world. What am I referring to? The 1979 Iranian Revolution is a very big deal revolution in 20th century history. A lot of historians will refer to it as the last great revolution of the 20th century. And by great, I don't mean good. I mean titanic, big, important. What do I mean by this? It's a real revolution. It's not simply a matter of some new people taking over the government or redoing the state or a presidential election which has new people in power, or military coup which puts people in power. When you say the word revolution, you have the connotation that something big, titanic, new is happening that's affecting everything. A new idea or ideology which is going to influence the economics or politics of this place, or perhaps the region or the world. And in that sense, you don't have that many real revolutions that have occurred on planet Earth. A few, an example, the American Revolution, kind of a big deal, really introduces democracy into the modern world. That impacts on a much bigger scale than just America. Or the French Revolution, which really rattled and destroyed monarchy, which was the ruling system across all of Europe. The French Revolution really impacts Europe for 100 years. The Communist Revolution in Russia, 1917. They kick out the monarchs and then devise a whole new leadership system, which is going to wildly impact 20th century events, the Cold War and all that stuff, because of this revolution. In that sense, the Iranian Revolution is one of the big revolutions of the 20th century because it does have major impacts in the state, but also the region and the world, and that plays into current events of the day. Why so much animosity and hate? Well, let's back it up again and say, well, how did this go down? What were the Iranians revolting about that they had the revolution and created something new, something big that influences the rest of the planet? Back in 1979, the state of Iran had been run for decades, if not hundreds of years, by old school monarchy. Now remember, talking 1979, it's 31 years ago. Monarchy is largely dead everywhere else in the world. The Russians have got rid of them, the Americans, the Europeans, but it still thrived in Iran and in a fairly brutal existence as well. The dude in charge, his name was the Shah, Reza Shah of Iran, And he had taken over from his daddy. Between them, they'd ruled for 50 or 60 years. And this is a monarchy and a monarch that's really bordering on full-on dictator. He's not a nice dude. He's not a good dude. He pretty much steals the wealth of the state and brings it to himself. Iran produces a hell ton of oil, and the Shah and his family really absorb almost all that wealth while the Iranian population is getting poorer. On top of that, he's attempting to modernize and industrialize the country, which sounds good from the offset, but he's really westernizing it at the same time, bringing in Western business people and Western finance and Western culture, which is now starting to threaten Iranian culture and Islamness. So there's lots of folks in Iran who always hated this dude, who increasingly in the 50s, 60s, and 70s really start to despise the dude and really want a change. They want a revolution. And they despise and hate the Iran, and they hate the United States as well. Whoa, hey, hold on. How did I get the United States involved in this story? Why did the Iranians hate the United States? Because as brutal and horrific and terrible as this Shah dude was, he was supported by the United States. And everybody in Iran knows that. Oh, that's terrible. I mean, even back in 1953, the Iranians had it with this dude so much they had thrown him out of the country. They actually had an uprising, threw the Shah out, and this is terrible to have to say this to folks, but the U.S. CIA hatched a coup and went in and actually took out the democratically elected president that the Iranians had put into power. They kicked out a democratic elected guy and put the Shah back in power. And the Iranians knew this too. And this is just horrific. And the U.S. had been sponsoring this dude for decades. Now, why would they do that? Well, put it into context. This is the Cold War. The U.S. wants folks on their side to fight the commies. And Iran's a big, powerful, oil-producing state. So the U.S. wants them on Team U.S. They don't want Iran going to the commies. It would be a big blow during the Cold War. So they support this dictator, and this is not the first time the U.S. has supported questionable, seedy, nasty, terrible dictators. They've done it in many other places too, and Iran is such a case. So aid flowed into the Shah, and the U.S. sold the Shah tons and tons and tons of weaponry. He was big. He got his big woody off of weaponry. So he got tons of weaponry from the U.S., used mostly to suppress his own population. And every time there was an uprising or protest, he would suppress the population more. So by the 70s, I mean, this cat is just despised and hated in Iran, and most Iranians blame and hate the U.S. for his existence too. So that sets the stage for the revolution. The hate is already there before they become the Islamic State of Iran. How did it come to pass? Well, because during this decades of hate building up, one dude in particular you should know, the Ayatollah Khomeini was surfing on this wave of hate and really kind of structuring the protest and was leading the charge to overthrow the Shah. If you've never seen the Ayatollah Khomeini, here's a picture of him. Oh my God, he's a little scary. He got a face only a mother could love, maybe a dead mother. Although he has a striking resemblance to an old Sean Connery. Scary nonetheless. But this dude is extremely pious, extremely conservative religious cleric. It's a Shiite Islamic cleric, a holy man of sorts. And he rails against the Shah, despises the Shah, and despises the U.S. for supporting the Shah. And he's very vocal about this and makes lots of speeches and fiery orations about how the Iranian people need to stand up and purge out the Shah and purge out foreign influence with the Shah and purge out all the Western capitalists and all the Western villainy and all the Western excesses, because that's impinging not only on Iranian culture, but on pure Islamic culture. So he really, really hates the West. State built on hate. And so, long story short, by 1979, all this comes to a head. And millions and millions and millions of people are out protesting in the street, perhaps the largest human protest in history. Perhaps 10 to 15 million Iranians take to the streets to get rid of this horrific monarchy dictatorship Shah, led by Ayatollah Khomeini in his fiery oration. And this does happen in 1979. The Shah's forced to abdicate, flees the country, hauls ass, he's gone. And everybody's, yay, celebrating, oh, all right, whoa, sweet, what are we going to do now?